How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, lately I've been talking about the cost of messing with royalty. Also, I did a video recently about how Esau's year has ended and how Esau's year has begun. Now, our year begins in March, and I keep repeating the same thing over and over. Their new year begins the first of the year, and they want us all to partake in that type of energy. And what you are celebrating is the dead. At this time, nature is dormant. Now just think about it, my royal family. Our folks knew exactly what they was doing, celebrating when things blossom and bloom and come to beautiful colors. Because during this phase, in the dormant phase, we don't see much color. So it lets you know how in tune the royal family was in tune with nature. And I've been saying that there are side effects to white supremacy. We know your signs and we know your symbols, because if the enemy is listening, y'all make a point of never ever letting us forget your level of hate, self-hate, hate within your community, and then the side effects of it. It affects America. Truly, it affects the entire globe. But there's something different going on now, my royal family. We're seeing on a day-to-day basis how this thing has caught up with them. And in fact, there's an article that was sent to me that I'm going to do a special video on that shows you their level of concern. Oh, they're paying attention. They're paying attention. But see, even though they're paying attention, they don't know what else to do. They have done everything under the sun to keep us in so-called control. But you could not figure out how to control your own. And your own is speaking volumes about your nature. So let's get into this first one, my royal family.
Ranking Member Roy, distinguished members of this subcommittee, my name is George Salim. I serve as the Senior Vice President for Programs at the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. It is indeed an honor to appear before you today to address the issue of white supremacy and the threat it poses to all of our communities. Thank you to my fellow panelists for being here today as well. In particular, I wanted to thank Susan for sharing about her daughter, Heather. I deeply admire the work you are doing, Susan. And at ADL and in communities across the country, we stand by you in your fight against the hatred that took her life. Unfortunately, in the short time since the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in August of 2017, white supremacist violence has continued to shatter many families across the country and across the globe. Families in Pittsburgh, in Christchurch, in Poway, and other places have been affected by this insidious form of violence. More can be done to counter this threat, and more must be done before the next inevitable tragedy. I have served at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and at the White House on the National Security Council. I watched the rise of ISIS and the full-throated government response to counter it. Now, the rise of white supremacist terrorism poses a similarly serious threat. Yet, instead of scaling up to meet the threat, the government seems to be scaling down. Fewer resources dedicated to preventing and countering extremism, and little transparency and accountability with respect to how the government sees the threat and what it is specifically doing to counter it. The University of Maryland START Center found that from 9/11 through 2017, 71% of Islamist-inspired extremists in the US were interdicted in the planning phase of their terrorist plots. On the other hand, far-right extremists, the inverse is the case. Nearly 71% managed to successfully commit their acts of violence. And so the question before us, as you noted, Mr. Chairman, is why? It is paramount to counter extremism in all its forms. At this time today, white supremacist extremism warrants far greater attention than it currently receives. Our ADL data has shown that in the last year, of the 50 murders that were committed at the hands of extremists, all but one were linked to right-wing extremism, and 78% were tied to white supremacy specifically. Last year was the deadliest year for the Jewish community and the third highest on record for anti-Semitic incidents in the United States. This form of hate targets not only Jews, African Americans, Muslims, non-white immigrants, and the LGBTQ community as well. The data is clear. The white supremacist threat in the United States is at disturbingly high levels, and we must work together now to ensure that the worst is not yet to come. Like other forms of extremism, white supremacists seek to spread their ideology. Most believe in a conspiracy theory that the white race, as Susan noted, is in danger of extinction due to the rising number of non-whites who are, quote, controlled and manipulated by Jews, and that their imminent action is needed, in their view, to, quote, save the white race. Then they convince other adherents that they must act immediately to counter that perceived threat, which manifests itself in the form of hate and violence. Not only do white supremacist extremists spread this propaganda through flyers and banners and events, but on the internet, on social media as well, ranging from mainstream platforms like Gab and 8chan, where they are proselytizing and conspiring and are less scrutinized in many instances at the public eye. Today's propaganda is tomorrow's hate and violence in our communities. More can and must be done to counter this threat and prevent it from getting worse. Instead of increasing intelligence into the domestic terrorist threats, the Department of Homeland Security has discontinued prevention grants entirely and has sharply reduced the number of terrorism prevention staff. The FBI, in its own testimony last week, admitted to having fewer resources to counter domestic terrorism than international terrorism. The National Counterterrorism Center does not currently view domestic terrorism as within its legal remit. These things need to change immediately. All of this, while white supremacists continue to proselytize and mobilize across the country and across the globe. More can be done and more must be done. ADL urges swift and comprehensive action to counter the threat of white supremacy specifically. A few things to list off, which we can get into more in the question and answer. Our first recommendation is we need to speak out much more strongly and decisively against white supremacy at all levels and all leadership at the federal, state, and local level. Second, to urgently consider legislative proposals designed to improve the government's ability to counter the threat. 3, to invest in prevention efforts to stop this threat from getting worse. 4, to improve and increase our data and reporting on hate crimes and bias-motivated incidents across the United States. And last, to work with the technology sector to advance common sense solutions to prevent the abuse on their platforms by white supremacists and their adherents.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salim.
All right, my royal family. All of what he's saying sounds good. It sounds good. But over here on the True Royal family, or True Royal, we speak in reality. This is a prime example of the enemy eating its own. There's nothing that the government can do at this point because the fiber of America is woven in with white supremacy. So the very people that you are asking to counter white supremacy, they're white supremacists. They're sitting there watching their own. And they're going to have a lackluster attitude about doing their job. Most likely, they will, give them a heads up that we about to infiltrate and shut you down. And so somebody might ask, well, True Rose, you seem like you have the answer. I might have some of an answer how this is going to all end, but I'm not going to say anything until the very end. So as we continue on, my royal family, see what other folks have to say.
Coverage of race for justice continues with a new CBS News poll showing how Americans' view on racial discrimination are shifting. More than half of Americans believe that white people have a better chance of getting ahead in today's society. That's compared with black people. And now that's up 13 points from 2015. Nationwide protests against inequality are encouraging more people to have discussions not only about race, but also white privilege. Robin DiAngelo is a sociologist, and she's author of this book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. I love this title. She joins us with the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, CBS News contributor Ibram X. Kendi. Both of them join us this morning. Good to see you both. Robin, I'm going to start with you. In your book, you write this: unless white people have ongoing and intentional study, their opinions will be uninformed and ignorant. I read that and I thought, whoa, very blunt language. So I would like you to explain what white privilege is exactly and why white people have such a hard time seeing it, because it's so clear to most black people I know.
Certainly, and thank you for having me. White privilege is the automatic, taken for granted advantage bestowed upon white people as a result of living in a society based on the premise of white as the human ideal, and that from its founding established white advantage as a matter of law, and today as a matter of policy and practice. And it doesn't matter if you agree with it, if you want it, if you even are aware of it, it's 24/7, 365. And one of the reasons why it's so hard for white people to see it, well, there are many reasons, but one is it serves us not to see it. We come to feel entitled to that advantage. We're told that we deserve it and that we earned it. And we take great umbrage when that is challenged.
You write too, Robin, in the book that kids from the age between 3 and 4 are intuitively taught that being white is better, that you are superior. I thought that that was an interesting thing, but I find many white Americans today say, listen, I struggle too. I don't have white privilege. What are you talking about?
And I'm really clear that I'm not saying that white people don't struggle or face barriers or work hard, but there's a major barrier in this society, racism, that we don't struggle with. And not struggling against that barrier actually helps us navigate the barriers that we do struggle with. You grew up in poverty. How has being white shaped how you experience poverty and how you get out of poverty, if you do get out of poverty? Again, it's not saying that white Americans don't work hard, but it's a bit like being a fish in a current that impacts the outcome of that work. There's a kind of moving along that amplifies that work. And for people of color, for black people, you're swimming against a current. And we're both working, we're both swimming, but there's such a different impact on the outcome of that effort.
Ibram, what are the questions that you think white Americans should be asking these days? And I say this because I don't know any black friend of mine that hasn't gotten calls from white people all around saying, I don't know what to do, I want to help, I want to be supportive. A black male friend of mine in Texas said for the first time he was invited on the company retreat, and he's been there 10 years with, his coworkers seeking him out. What are the questions white Americans should be asking?
Well, I think many white Americans claim they believe in racial equality. And so the way you put that to the test is by asking questions about racial disparities. So why is it that unarmed black people are killed by police too many times and armed white people are simply arrested? Why is it in Minneapolis that black people are 20% of the population, but 60% of the victims of police shootings? Why is it that the Black unemployment rate is twice as high as the white unemployment rate? And there's only two answers. Either there's something wrong with Black people, there's something superior about white people, or racism.
Ibram, you've said that to end white privilege, you have to deal with racism first, right?
Yes, yeah, and I mean, as Robin, talked about, it is critical for white people, for people in general, to stop denying their racist ideas, to stop denying the ways in which policies have benefited them, to stop denying their racism, and to realize that actually the heartbeat of racism itself is denial, and the sound of that heartbeat is, I'm not racist.
Robin, do you believe that white folks actually care about racial injustice?
It doesn't appear that we do. If you look at what it takes to wake us up, when you look at the explosion of umbrage white people take from the simple claim that Black Lives Matter, from somebody respectfully going down on their knee, all of the outrage about that, and then it takes us literally seeing a man being murdered in front of our eyes to wake us up. That's a really high price to pay for our enlightenment. And it just, I wonder what will happen when all the cameras go away and there's another issue in front of us. If we don't put something in place to keep our attention and our focus here. I mean, the status quo of our society is racism, and it's comfortable for white people. And so we're not going to get there from a place of white comfort. We're going to have to get mighty uncomfortable and inconvenienced. And it appears to me that in 20 years of working with white people, that if it requires anything of us like discomfort or inconvenience, we don't seem to be particularly motivated to do anything.
Robin DiAngelo, Ibram X. Kendi, thank you both for being with us.
I thought that was real necessary. Let me take that down. I thought that was really necessary to play that audio, because I want to continue to get a white perspective. And based on, I was more so really listening to what this woman had to say. Based on what she's saying, ain't nothing gonna work. Nothing gonna work. They want to stay in a certain comfort zone. But Lisa Cabrera has been saying to us repeatedly that social media is not working for them. Having these cameras and getting it to social media is displaying their nature. I'm going to keep going back to nature. You can't untrain this shit or anything. They're born with it. This is what is taught in their homes, and nothing has ever changed. Now, I know y'all wondering what I got to say about it. Well, I'm saying some things, but what I'm going to say in the end, some of y'all heard before. So we're going to continue on with this last audio. And this is this audio comes from a sister. It's real powerful, this article that she put together.
Four Ways That White Supremacy Harms White People, by Janice Gassam Asari. White supremacy is defined as both the belief that the white race is inherently superior to other races and that white people should have control over people of other races, as well as the social, economic, and political systems that collectively enable white people to maintain power over people of other races. Many people still visualize white supremacists as hood-wearing torchbearers who are outspoken advocates of oppressing Black, Indigenous people of color, BIPOC. While this is certainly still the case, white supremacy has shapeshifted since the United States' inception. Holding on to this outdated version of a white supremacy and using it as the prototype is one of the reasons why dismantling and deconstructing white supremacy has remained a challenge. It's likely that we have all engaged in activities and behaviors that contribute to white supremacy, whether we are aware of it or not. What is less commonly known and understood is how a system based on white supremacy harms not only BIPOC, but also white people. This article explores 4 ways that upholding white supremacy harms all of us. 1. Government programs help all people. While there is documented evidence of the positive effects of affirmative action programs to increase diverse group representation in the workplace, there is a segment of the population that believes that these programs, which were designed to increase equity, are actually a form of reverse racism. A persistent myth about affirmative action is that it unfairly advantages BIPOC. This was demonstrated in Chelsea Handler's 2019 documentary Hello, Privilege, It's Me, Chelsea. In the documentary, Handler visits a group of white women from Orange County, California, and a discussion about white privilege ensues. The women shared their belief that people of color receive unearned privileges and unfair advantages in society. In reality, the group that benefits the most from affirmative action programs are actually white women. The irony of this is that white women, according to reports, are actually some of the staunchest opponents of affirmative action programs. In addition, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that white people are the largest beneficiaries when it comes to government assistance programs. Racialized phrases like welfare queen have propagated the false narrative that black people, and particularly black women, are the ones who unfairly benefit from government programs. Without government assistance programs that were designed to aid the working class, white people would be severely disadvantaged. Following the election of America's first black president Barack Obama, anti-black sentiment rose. The Affordable Care Act, which was dubbed Obamacare, was staunchly opposed by many white Americans. According to one report, when analyzing those who gained health insurance coverage from 2010 to 2015, 8.2 million people who gained coverage were non-Hispanic whites, 43%, compared to 2.8 million non-Hispanic blacks, 15%, and 6.2 million Hispanics, 32%. Opposing these Obama-era policies has actually been harmful to white people in several different ways. 2. It stifles innovation. There is a wealth of evidence that indicates that diversity is beneficial to companies in a number of different ways, including how it enhances creativity and allows for greater innovation. Research from McKinsey found that racial and ethnic diversity also led to greater financial returns for corporations. One of the main tenets of white supremacy is the belief that whites should live by themselves in a whites-only society. When there is no diversity within a group, the same ideas, thoughts, and beliefs create an echo chamber. Organizations with a homogeneous makeup will find it challenging to remain competitive in the future, as the country becomes more racially diverse. Refusing to hire people of different racial backgrounds will disadvantage companies, no matter how successful they've been in the past. No company can survive or thrive by pushing BIPOC out. 3. It's ruining our environment. A less understood outcome of white supremacy is that it's harmful to the planet. Hopkins wrote, "You can't have climate change without sacrifice zones, and you can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people, and you can't have disposable people without racism." Hopkins explains that much of the environmental issues that our planet is currently facing are a result of deeming some parts of the world as disposable. More often than not, the parts that are deemed disposable are those primarily inhabited by BIPOC. Environmental racism is defined as the disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. White supremacy supports the belief that whites should have dominance over people of color. This dominance manifests in different ways, including the treating of BIPOC communities as disposable. What many fail to realize is that what is done to BIPOC communities, from the Flint water crisis to fracking on indigenous lands, has a deleterious effect on everyone. Environmental injustice impacts every person on the planet, regardless of race. Upholding white supremacy will ultimately deteriorate the earth that we all have to share and is therefore harmful to everyone. 4. No one is free until we are all free. Martin Niemöller wrote a powerful poem called First They Came that best articulates why white supremacy is harmful to white people. White supremacy is based on the ideology that the white race is superior to all other races and must therefore assert dominance over non-whites. White people who don't fit the picture of perfection that is deemed the prototype of whiteness are at risk of being castigated and banished from white supremacist society. White people who don't fit the archetype of whiteness may be subject to ostracism and will lose their hold of white privilege. Anti-racism educator Monique Melton shared that perfectionism is white supremacy by another name. For white supremacy to thrive, there must always be a subordinate caste to oppress. One less considered fact is that any person at any time can become part of a marginalized community through no fault of their own. A person who suddenly becomes disabled, for example, may experience discrimination based on their disability status. As long as white supremacy exists, those in marginalized groups will continue to be oppressed. Dismantling white supremacy is beneficial for everyone, particularly because anyone can find themselves in the subordinate caste, and as long as white supremacy is able to flourish, marginalization will continue. In the words of the Dr. Martin Luther King, no one is free until we are all free.
That was a deep article. I mean, that sister brought it, literally brought it home. What stood out to me when I first heard this article was that white supremacy is infecting the environment. And that is absolutely true. The air is bad. The water is bad. They've been doing the chemtrail things for, I don't know how long. You know, it was here before I even got here and stuff. That when I say now, I don't really technically mean now. I'm just using now as a phrase. But white supremacy has been affecting the environment for a long ass time because of their nature. Their nature is destructive. And I was even thinking about how white supremacy has been affected in the medical industry. See, they didn't really talk about the medical industry. And we can see that Yahweh is really putting a smackdown on them. In this war, there are casualties, so there are other races that are affected. That is the side effects of it. But disproportionately, their children are being affected, and they are being affected. And I'm not just talking about health-wise, I'm talking about educational, economical. We got a food shortage. I mean, I went to the store yesterday, and I was astounded. The stuff that I came in there to get, I had to readjust myself. And then my husband had to go to another store to make ends meet in order for our house to be fully supplied of the things that we need. And I'm like, damn, this is very, very real. And this is all due to white supremacy, them wanting to be the dominant in a dying system. Isn't that something? Your system is dying before your eyes, and you want to continue to be dominant. So the question that people are asking, may be asking, well, True Road, do you have any answer? I'm going to say what I always say. The total elimination of the Caucasoid race. They are the destructive ones. Anywhere they go. I'm going to keep saying what Cap say. I ain't going to take nobody's talking points. And it don't matter the particular order. When they show up, he said they bring disease, death, destruction, and it was another one. Cap know all four of them. But it's like, you are known for this. Like, them sorry asses down there in South Africa that I did videos about years ago. They asked, could they come to different European countries? They don't want them. They know their own. They know that they are a burden to society. Think about this. You are a burden to the environment. To the environment. That you bring in destruction to the environment because of your greed. You want to deplete the entire earth of her precious minerals. So wherever you go, you want to partake and take. You create war to take from different countries their precious minerals. Well, we are in a different space and time. I'm speaking directly to the enemy. So what are you going to do now? Well, we're seeing what's going on now. when they can't unleash that energy of pure hate on us, they unleash it on their own. They unleash it on animals. They unleash it on the environment. Any form of fashion, because they know that they are doomed. So they want everybody to be doomed with them. Well, your master plan didn't work, like I said before, because as I speak, we were supposed to be eliminated, the royal family, but we are the chosen ones. Yes. And we're suffering through this pain and plight too as well. But my royal family, we must continue to have total faith. But in this war, we need to do our own thinking, make sure that we deal with our immediate situation that I constantly talk about, and stay out of the enemy's way as much as possible, because the destruction is here, and I am speaking in the now. So what I need my royal family to do, I need you to render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And as always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.